Welcome to Trial Site News Weekly Roundup. My name is Adrian, and I'll be going over some of our top news stories from this past week. Please click the subscribe button and ring the bell to be notified of future videos. Today we start with cardiovascular news-related stories. Cardiovascular disease is a top killer, and clearly more has to be done to reduce the impact worldwide. In the United States, heart disease is the leading cause of death according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC. The costs both to public sector and private employer in economic productivity is high and ultimately contribute to accumulating national debt. The current health systems are more reactionary than proactive. What else can be done? Well, according to a new study from the UK's University of Birmingham, pharmacists infused into GP practice workflows could play an integral role in reducing and preventing cardiovascular disease. There are some experiments ongoing in the US, and we should consider about including more. Why not give it a try? Elsewhere in cardiovascular news stories, informed consent is a fundamental ethical underpinning for clinical research, as established by the Declaration of Helsinki many decades ago. The informed consent process when it comes to percutaneous coronary intervention, or PCI, a common intervention in high and middle income countries, lacks an effective informed consent process, as over 40% of patients acknowledge that they didn't understand or even remember being told the true purposes of the common intervention. In a recent study conducted by the UK's University of Huddersfield, it was revealed many patients thought that opening up blocked arteries will cure them of heart disease. Something is wrong here, and corrections need to be addressed. Turning now to HIV-related news stories. According to the website for the HIV preventative drug Descovy, it has not been tested for females who engage in sex vaginally. This means that more than half the population of the world has been excluded from the clinical trials that could have helped prevent HIV in a high at-risk population. Why would this be the case? How can this be avoided moving forward? Good questions, and we'll keep you posted on the story as it continues to develop. Elsewhere, Professor Lawrence Klotz, one of the clinical investigators working on LIDDS LPC-04 study, recently summarized the results at the 11th European Multidisciplinary Congress on Urological Cancers, or EMUC19. Professor Klotz presented the Phase 2b clinical data from the LIDDS study LPC-004 prostate cancer study on Lymphatic depot from sponsor LIDDS. This experimental therapy was invented by Swedish researchers and entrepreneurs. Meanwhile, 3 late-stage HIV vaccine trials known as HVTN 702, Imbrocado, and Mosaico, which are poised to make important advances against the human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, are entering the final stages of testing at sites across the globe. Turning now to Alzheimer's-related news stories. Singapore-based TauRX is progressing its experimental medicine known as LMTM to advanced Phase 3 clinical trials in America and Europe based on the results of 2 previous Phase 3 studies, evidencing the potential promise as a treatment for Alzheimer's disease. Turning now to cancer-related news stories. Young Dana-Farber investigators Jennifer Guerrero, PhD, and Sarah Hill, MD, PhD, are on a mission to find better treatments for breast, ovarian, and other cancers. Their research depends on patient tissue samples obtained by surgeons Dana-Farber's Susan F. Smith Center for Women's Cancers. Elsewhere, the Metastatic Breast Cancer Alliance, or the MBCA, the largest coalition of nonprofit breast cancer organizations, pharmaceutical biotech companies, and patient advocates in America, released MBC Connect 2.0, an interactive web and mobile-friendly patient registry empowering patients to collaborate with researchers to advance metastatic breast cancer research. Patient to clinical trial matching comes next. Meanwhile, although similarities exist between childhood and adult leukemias, evidence suggests that the cancer don't share the same genetic roots. New research hints that childhood leukemia may be able to hijack only young, developing cells like those found in fetuses and children, not the mature cells of full-grown adults, according to Dr. Thomas Murcher, a director of hematology-oncology research for the French National Institute of Health and Medical Research and the Gustave Roussy Research Institute in Hijacked, France. Meanwhile, Cantargia reported positive results from the Phase 1 and 2A CANFOUR trial evaluating CANFOUR in combination with chemotherapy in patients with metastatic pancreatic cancer and metastatic non-small cell lung cancer, or NSCLC. The data shows that by adding CANFOUR, response rates are higher than historical data using the standard first-line chemotherapies alone. Elsewhere, Laura Holmes Haddad was diagnosed with stage 4 inflammatory breast cancer at age 37, the mom of 2 children, ages 1 and 4. A rare and aggressive form of cancer attacking the lymphatic system near the breast. It is a deadly form of the disease, typically far distributed across the body by the time it is diagnosed. She ended up participating in a clinical trial at City of Hope. Several years later, the cancer was gone. The City of Hope study saved her life, but tens of thousands of Americans with cancer could use this kind of help as well. Unfortunately, only 1 in 20 adult cancer patients in America enroll in a clinical trial based on a 2019 study in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute, or only 8% of eligible cancer patients are participating in what can be a life-saving study. The need for access is severe and imminent. Why? Well, 1.7 million new cases of cancer are diagnosed annually. Continuing on, Georgetown Lombardi Comprehensive Cancer researchers have found that patients with follicular lymphoma, or FL, a slow-growing lymphatic system cancer, who have been treated and are in remission for at least 2 years, may no longer have what has been considered an incurable disease. The team has come to this conclusion based on highly sensitive testing powered by Seattle-based Adaptive Biotechnologies. And this implies that some of these patients may not need therapy or active follow-up. Turning now to diabetes-related news stories. Lannett Company, or LCI, announced that the first human study evaluating insulin glargine, a long-acting insulin used to treat adults with type 2 diabetes, as well as adults and pediatric patients with type 1 diabetes for control of high blood sugar, produced positive results. Developed in accordance with the strategic alliance partners within the HEC group of companies, or HEC, they are establishing the data and momentum to support the biosimilarity of glargine to the reference drug Sanofi's Lantus. Turning now to stem cell-related news stories. Chris Barr met the ultimate life-changing tragedy when he was involved in a surfing accident, permanently damaging his spinal cord. He thought he would never walk again. The prognosis was bad, noted Barr in a recent ABC Good Morning America interview. Things felt so bleak that he even contemplating ending of his life. A phone call from the Mayo Clinic was the first day of the rest of his life. Turning now to clinical trial-related news stories. A global team of influential researchers, clinicians, regulators, and citizen advocates suggest how we can start to build an evidence base for healthcare that is free of commercial influences. These proposed pathways arise from the analysis of relevant evidence and examples from around the world. The list is not comprehensive or definitive and is designed to inform intensified debate and development of detailed recommendations. Meanwhile, clinical research site expansion continues at a healthy rate as Cenexcel Clinical Research, Inc., or Cenexcel, acquires Research Centers of America, or RCA, a Hollywood, Florida-based clinical investigational site. This acquisition enables Cenexcel to expand their centers of excellence to 5 of the most experienced clinical research sites in the country. Cenexcel continues to execute on a methodical strategy to own and integrate research units with distinguished records for both assisting with protocol development and conducting phase 1 through 4 clinical trials in their quest to become a high-quality national site organization, or what TrialSite has coined, part of a class of site known as a super site organization. This affords them the position to win more business from global biopharmaceutical sponsors. Elsewhere, Charlotte Eye, Ear, Nose, and Throat Associates, PA, or the CINTA, has been a Charlotte, North Carolina region premier eye, ear, nose, and throat care provider for adult and pediatric patients for nearly 100 years, with the largest multi-specialty practice on the East Coast, with nearly 20 locations throughout North and South Carolina, over 140 providers offering comprehensive adult and pediatric care, a full list of ancillary departments and services. They are in search of a clinical research coordinator, a healthcare professional responsible for assisting the physician's investigator with all aspects of conducting a clinical trial by providing medical treatment and medical care services to patients. Announces an exciting new opportunity for clinical research coordinators was published at the prestigious Columbia University Center for Precision Medicine in the Department of Anesthesiology. They are seeking experienced clinical research coordinator to coordinate multi-site research projects at this innovative center. Elsewhere, patient engagement is coming to China, the world's second largest economy and largest country by population. At a recent event in Beijing, representatives from over 50 patient organizations from home and abroad sought a dynamic exchange of ideas around a drug research and development, from R&D to clinical trials, accessibility, and improving overall outcomes. One thing was clear: patients in China are eyeing engagement with the drug development life cycle, from early research and clinical trials to regulatory submission and commercialization. With up to 400 million people in the new middle class, this matters. Event organizer Roche is thinking ahead and making some savvy moves in China. Meanwhile, site management organizations come in different shapes, sizes, flavors, and colors. Some are constituent parts of contract research organizations, or CROs, while others are part of private equity-backed roll-up operations. Still, others may represent independent, standalone operations. Some employ physicians, clinical investigators, and do traditional site work, like conduct studies, while many others oversee and manage the process. TrialSite News surveyed some of the leading organizations worldwide to educate our readers as to who some of these players are. We surveyed some SMO leaders in various regions in the world. Nothing is moving still as the clinical research site sectors morph to keep up with sponsor demands. Turning now to clinical challenges, news stories. Sage Therapeutics reported top-line results from the pivotal Phase 3 Mountain study evaluating the effect of Sage 217 on depressive symptoms in adults with major depressive disorder, or MDD. The Mountain study did not meet its primary endpoint of a statistically significant reduction from baseline compared to placebo in the 17-item Hamilton Rating Scale for Depression, or HAM-D, total score at day 15. Elsewhere, TrialSite News a while back surveyed stem cell clinics across America. We titled it The Stem Cell Research, Promise and Possible Peril. We showcased how quacks are running amok in America and the Caribbean, putting patients' lives in danger, not to mention swindling them from life savings. Well, thankfully, Google is attempting to live up to the corporate ethos of do no evil in an attempt to not contribute to what can be dangerous operations. Meanwhile, could we be entering bubble territory with publicly traded Chinese biotechnology ventures? With all of the conditions present for a massive success, extreme volatility and lack of profits make this an investment sector not for the faint of heart. In a market where it is not uncommon to see wild fluctuations in share price, money is to be made and lost in the short run. China's clinical trials sector becomes more dynamic and potentially volatile by the day. Now, last week we reported on the Catch Me If You Can crook, and fake investigator Sami Anwar defrauded clinical trial sponsors and CROs out of millions, put patients' lives at risk, and tainted the hard-earned stature of many innocent doctors. Well, TrialSite News provides an introduction to this ongoing inquiry here, and the link will be provided in the YouTube description below. Now, it is worth noting that we were one of the few clinical trial sector media assets that even covered this shockingly disturbing case. It had directly impacted on multiple clinical trials, and we will be keeping you posted on this story as it continues to develop. Elsewhere, a wealthy, diverse, dynamic, multicultural, and bilingual nation, Canada, wields tremendous influence in biopharma markets, giving its position as the 9th largest biopharma drug market in the world, with a relatively small population of 37.59 million people. In the age of value-based precision medicine, Canada represents an important site location, and in bilingual Quebec, research site operations such as DX Research offer unique collaborative partnerships for industry sponsors seeking to progress investigational drug candidates. Now, for most industry sponsors, conducting clinical trials represents a multinational global affair. With rapid drug market globalizations comes the need for more global clinical trials. As we are map geeks here at Trial Site News, we share, for those interested, the significantly dry yet incredibly important subject of clinical trials, global insurance. A plethora of regulatory and operational challenges follow the global pursuits of clinical programs driven by industry, government, and nonprofit clinical trial sponsors. Visualizing the global risk at a high level intrigues those that care about these sort of things. Aon's 6th edition Clinical Trials Risk Map highlights clinical trials insurance regulations and complexities for over 80 countries throughout the world. Turning now to neurodegenerative news stories. Researchers from the Center for Neurogenetics and colleagues from the Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine report a novel small molecule modulator called S181, which shows promise in preclinical research animal studies for the treatment of familial form of Parkinson's disease. However, researchers caution it is not yet ready for phase 1 trials in humans. Turning now to autoimmune-related news stories. Biotech's bermekimab, a promising experimental drug generating significant interest with hidradenitis suppurativa patients in the Trial Site News network, has been sold to Janssen Biotech, Inc., a Janssen pharmaceutical company of Johnson & Johnson. Bermekimab is a novel antibody that neutralizes interleukin-1 alpha. As it turns out, it also promotes disease-causing inflammation in a wide range of medical conditions. Biotech has presented on Trial Site News podcast series this very story. Do you have any clinical news you'd like us to report on? If so, let us know. Contact information will be provided in the box below. If you'd like to watch more videos, you can click on the playlist that'll appear here. Thank you for joining us for this week's Trial Site News Roundup. And remember, subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of updates. We'll see you next time.